Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. The inaugural season of the UEFA Europa Conference League climaxed moments ago with AS Roma tackling Feyenoord at the Air Albania Stadium in the capital, Tirana. We have highlights.
There is nothing like the first time. The winners here will be in perpetuity the originals. They play here for a page in the European history books. The first UEFA Conference League final, Tirana, Albania, and two grand clubs from Rotterdam and Rome. Pellegrini, just too much for Zaniolo. It's a lovely thought. Forward by Karsdorp, down by Abraham. Pellegrini, Cristante. In by Mancini. Zaniolo! Roma strike first in Tirana!
Such clever play again, no pressure on the centre-half in possession. Zaniolo's drifted across the pitch, but he reacts so quickly, that ball just skims off the head of Trauner. And he's actually falling backwards, but then how quickly he gets traction, he moves onto the ball quicker than anybody else. It's a brilliant finish.
Dessus is down, Kupchu went for goal. Malasia's cross. Rui Patricio got palms on it. Digging them out of their small hole here. Fired across the face, was that against the post from Trauner? It came back out to Till. And Rui Patricio made a great smother. Coming to shoot out to Liverpool, the game made famous by Bruce Grobbelaar's wobbly knees. Sinisterra. Set it back for Auschness. Malacia! Oh, what a save! Rui Patricio. Spinazzola. Vertu. That's a super ball for Pellegrini. Beaten out by Bailo, who keeps Feyenoord alive. Roma, European prize winners for the very first time. Jose has cracked it again. The first winners of the UEFA Europa Conference League. A vast club that needs prizes has a prize. And look how chuffed it is with itself.
Yeah, AS Roma, the last time they won a trophy was 2008, but the last time they won something big was 2001. That team of Gabriel Batistuta, Cafu, and the company, Fabio Capello was the coach. They won the Serie A in 2001. Nothing big since Coppa Italia, not that big, but today they landed a big prize, the Europa Conference League, and Mourinho was the architect, the man who guided them there. Joining us to recap the match and the inaugural season of this Conference League is our international man of football, Simon Evans. Simon, good afternoon. Welcome to the SportsMax Zone.
Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
Yeah. So I guess the obvious place to start is AS Roma. After those pair of defeats to Bodo Glimt early in this competition, Mourinho was lampooned, the squad was derided, and we all thought that, it was a bits and pieces selection that he had, and he would fail to even make an impression in this Europe's third-tier cup football competition. None of us knew at that time how wrong we would have been proven.
That's right. Yeah, he's created a team again as Mourinho. You know, they're not a brilliant team, but they're an effective team, and they're one who, you know, next year in the Europa League, because that's the prize for winning the Conference League is automatic qualification to the group stage of the Europa League. You can see Roma being a difficult opponent if they add a couple of extra players to that. But he's created a unit there, and he's very good at doing that.
Yep, and even in the worst of times, well, you know what, forget that. I want to put this to you early in the conversation, despite the fact that I want to keep it open so my colleagues can have a fair crack at talking about it. But here's the thing. In his pre-match press conference, he said, I'm no longer the special one. That's old hat. That was from my time in England. That was a different stage of my career. Might it be, Simon Evans, that failure has taken some of the edge of Jose Mourinho. In other words, his record has humbled him. His record with Manchester United, how it eventually ended, how his Spurs sojourn eventually ended, how his second stint at Chelsea ended. That those things have served to humble him so that even in his own mind, he can't see himself as a special one, notwithstanding his ability to conjure performances like this from his team in big cup games.
I think he has been humbled, and I think humbled in also by the fact that he's now coaching a team that he knows are not going to win the Italian league, and he knows are not going to win the Champions League, and he struggled to accept that at Tottenham Hotspur, I think, and I certainly heard, from around the time he was at Manchester United, that he was very intolerant of players who weren't up to the standards he'd expected during his time at Real Madrid, Inter and Chelsea, when he had a team that was at the top end of the Champions League. And I think going into a club there where the expectations were build a project, try and build a team. I don't think anyone expected him to win anything this year. It was a case of progressing Roma, getting them out of a tricky patch they got themselves where they were being drawn towards the middle of the table in Italy, and to try and build a team that might be something in the future. I think he's enjoyed that. I think he's a little bit more relaxed with it. He's certainly tolerant, because you can't go into a club like that and demand the absolute highest standards in everything from players who aren't top players. So I think that's brought out a different side of him.
Yes, Simon, and just to stick with the Mourinho conversation, based on, and I want to juxtapose this with what's happening in the Premier League, seeing that Mourinho was able to get Roma to win this title, do you get the sense that, and we all know that a lot of teams in the Premier League will now be looking, so is it that based on this performance, Jose Mourinho heads back across?
I get the feeling that he quite likes it at Roma at the moment. I mean, not just because they've won tonight, but I think he likes living in Italy. I think he likes being at a club. He's got an ego. Everyone's got an ego, and Jose Mourinho has an ego bigger than most. I think he enjoys the fact that he's adored in Roma, and he's going to be even more adored after this victory. So I would be surprised if he jumped ship straight away. And there isn't an obvious job out there in England. I'm not saying we won't see him again, because you can see a situation, for example, the one that a lot of people would mention would be, if things don't go as rapidly upwards as Newcastle United Saudi owners want, will they stick with Eddie Howe, or would they be tempted to go for someone like Mourinho? You could see him maybe going back to England with Newcastle at some stage in the future. But at the moment, I think he's fairly committed to this Roma project, and I think he's building something interesting there.
Yes, and now that Roma has tasted victory, what would be on the cards for them?
Well, I think, if you look at their squad, they are a way below in terms of the quality that they have of AC Milan, who just won the title, and Inter and Juventus, who were up there. Closing the gap, getting themselves in the conversation, qualifying for the Champions League, getting back to being a top four side in Italy is what Roma need to do, and that's quite a job in itself.
Simon, in assessing the accomplishment here of Jose Mourinho, the opening minutes of this discussion is surrounding a lot about what this victory means and where Mourinho is at the moment as far as his career is concerned. From the standpoint of achievement and what he's been able to do with this club, difficult to assess because this is a third tier. But are AS Roma the best team in this European Conference League? And I ask that to get to the bottom of how well he did with this team.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against it, isn't it? I mean, in a one-off match against Leicester City, with Leicester City being at full strength, would you always back Roma? Probably not, but it's a cup competition, and I think he's negotiated it as obviously as well as you can, and it's an interesting competition. I think it's one that there was a lot of scepticism about in England, of course, where people don't even necessarily always take the Europa League seriously, never mind a new third-tier competition. But I remember when this competition was first mooted a few years ago, talking to people around UEFA and the European Club Association, and they thought it would be a success, and they really pushed for it. And I think for the countries and the clubs that are involved in it, and places like Tirana, Albania would never really be hosting a Champions League final, they love it.
Yeah, and they did finish 6th in Serie A this season, didn't they? Which means that they would have qualified for Europe again based on their domestic season. So I guess overall, Mourinho could be reasonably satisfied, given his roster, that he's been able to do well with this club.
Yeah, I think so, and I think, you know, he'll be pushing them now, as he always does. Give me this player, give me that player, give me this player, and I can take you on much further. And in Italy, when the fans get behind a coach, the pressure that they can put on club owners is enormous, especially in somewhere like Roma, which, you know, there was 50,000 at the Olimpico Stadium tonight to watch that game on a giant screen. They'll be all over the streets tonight. I was just talking to a friend of mine who lives in Rome, who's a Lazio fan, who's saying it's going to be a nightmare because not only is he a Lazio fan having to hear Roma fans celebrate, but he's not going to get enough sleep tonight before he goes to work tomorrow because the party's going to go on all night. It's a football crazy city, is Rome. And so they'll really, really embrace all this. And they'll demand Mourinho gets what he wants.
Yeah, it's a different team-building exercise for him, though. If we draw a line from his time at Porto, where he was building the team with young players from Brazil and elsewhere. You remember Carlos Alberto, the Brazilian, who played such an interesting role, critical role for him in that Europa League success and then the Champions League success. And the young Portuguese stars that he had at his disposal. Then he came to Chelsea. He was able to buy the very best players from wherever. The same thing at Real Madrid and Inter Milan. The difference with Roma, as you know very well, is that top-tier talent aren't going to ace Roma. One, they can't pay the wages. Two, they aren't in the Champions League. And three, they aren't one of the glamour teams in Italy, even though they are a hugely popular team in Italy. And the fact that they're from the capital, so they cannot but be popular. Well, you know what I mean. And then the second-tier players aren't going to go to Roma as their first choice. So he's left looking at the third and fourth string players, who are players for perhaps like Nemanja Matic, who's no longer useful at a top club in England, who will leave Manchester United on a free transfer and would be ideal for someone like Mourinho and Roma. Mkhitaryan, a Premier League cast-off, to be fair, who wasn't good for purpose at the top end in England, has suddenly been reborn at Roma and was a key player for them this season until his injuries. And contrast that, Simon, with their top scorer, Tammy Abraham, who is in the first year of a contract with Roma, who said pointedly a couple of days ago that he's not even sure he's going to be here in the second season because he would have advertised his well-being, would have convinced himself that he can play at a higher level, and he doesn't see Roma as a higher level. So Mourinho faces the prospect of losing his top scorer, someone who I'm sure if he stays fit will score even more goals next season, and the reality of trying to pair him with third and fourth string talent from Europe. How does he reconcile all that?
Yeah, it's difficult, you know. I mean, I think they'll work very hard to keep Abraham because he's also hugely popular. I mean, the fans love him. He's made a big impact, scored goals there. And there are these players from the Premier League now seeing Serie A as a good place to go. I mean, the reason why Matic is going to go to Italy, whichever club he goes to, there's been talk of Juventus as well, but he'll like Italy, is because the pace of the game is nowhere near as fast as it is in England. And so you see players like Chris Smalling and Mkhitaryan able to take their time on the ball and so on, things that they're not able to do in the Premier League. Ashley Young looked finished in the Premier League and went and won a championship with Inter Milan in Italy. And it's not to say that Italy's not a good championship, but the pace of the game and the time you get on the ball is very different. So yeah, Abraham will probably want to try and test himself again at the Premier League at some stage. My advice to him would be have another good season in Italy, though. I mean, he found it so tough to get minutes in England. And, you know, at Chelsea, he was constantly being overlooked. And there was always a signing coming in ahead of him. Unless he got the right move, he should be very careful with his next move because he's building himself a reputation there. And
last, this time, in the few seconds we have left, I was trying to think while you were speaking the last time Jose Mourinho ended a football season where the fans of the club loved him. You've spoken about how the Roma fans love him, and it is true. And perhaps the last time the fans loved him anywhere was in his last championship season with Chelsea. The Man United fans and the Spurs fans, they have a lot of emotion towards Jose Mourinho. But love would be in very, very short supply.
Yeah, although, you know, the United fans never turned against him, you know. I mean, I was sat there at those games at Old Trafford and they weren't calling for Mourinho to be out. The anger was more at other people upstairs at that club. And, you know, he'll turn around now to this day and say if he'd have been given a couple of those signings that he wanted when he was at Manchester United, he could have done something special there. We'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know. Simon, thank you very much. All the best to you. Simon Evans there talking to us about the Europa Conference League final. The first ever final won by Roma. Jose Mourinho now perfect in European Cup competition finals. He's won the Champions League with Inter Milan and Porto, won the Europa League with Porto, won the Europa League with Manchester United, and now the Conference League with AS Roma. Quite a collection for the irascible Portuguese.
Thank you for watching SportsMax on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay informed.